Okay, so starting from Neo-Marxist, looking at the question, part 3, looking at the question, outline and assess sociological explanations of solutions to crime. So this is part 3 of essay guidance. We've mapped out the general introduction, which contains all the ingredients. And for any essay question, for any topic, a good strategy is to map out the main points for the general topic and then consider a logical order after that. So we've looked at interactions, we've evaluated them with Marxists, and then that leads us in a very logical way into the Neo-Marxist new criminology view, also known as radical criminology. And Neo-Marxists like Hebdig combine the influence of interactionist social action theories, which focus on human agency definitions, and the Marxist view to do with capitalism and the economic system. And so Hebdig argued that skinhead subcultures were a creative way of coping with and solving the problem of your class situation. So skinhead subcultures in the East End of London were a response to redevelopment of the East End, what was perceived as a threat to the working class way of life and community, and so as a way of preserving that sense of a way of life. So the bother boots, the drainpipe trousers, braces, the cropped hair, the jackets, all of these were seen as linked to the way of life of the working class. In terms of solutions to crime, therefore, we need to understand how both the interpretations of action by the individual explain crime and deviance, but also the class structure and the economic system. So we need to support and be sympathetic to people from different communities experiencing economic issues. Also part of the new criminology approach is Taylor, Walton and Young. And their argument is a combination of interactionism, looking at how we, not only the social reaction to crime, in terms of labelling and moral panics, also human agency in terms of our interpretations of our own behaviour and how people may interpret their own behaviour as politically justified, but also the economic and other cultural issues which are part of this wider context in terms of the social, economic and cultural issues surrounding particular crime and deviance. And the best example of this approach is Stuart Hall's Policing the Crisis study, where it was, he was arguing that mugging, a moral panic developed around mugging, focused on young black males, an immigrant group from lowest socio-economic status backgrounds who were labelled as a threat to the moral fabric of society. This was a way of distracting attention away from the real problems in the economic crisis, capitalism, poverty and unemployment. So according to Neo-Marxists, the solutions to crime lie in reducing labelling, looking at the real problems that labelling causes, looking at the reasons why people may interpret their own behaviour as acceptable, and trying to remove the problems in the economic and cultural systems such as racism and class prejudice, exploitation, etc. Okay, so we need to criticise the Neo-Marxist view next. Okay, so in looking at a criticism of the Neo-Marxist view, what can you think of? Okay, so we mentioned several things. We mentioned the social reaction and labelling, issues like racism, class prejudice, moral panics. We mentioned the idea of crime as a political act. We mentioned the idea of the economic system and poverty and unemployment. and those problems being solved in different ways. Reducing labelling, reducing racism, reducing people, interpreting their behaviour as acceptable by trying to change the political system itself. Can you think of any criticisms?
Neo-Marxist. Could you see moral panics are a result of the media's reaction, and they're not sort of a true representation of society?
Okay, I think the Neo-Marxists would agree with that, wouldn't they? So you could use that in the Neo-Marxist section to say that it's an exaggerated or untrue picture of society from the government, from the media. Who would say that the picture of society is accurate then, and that the Neo-Marxists are overplaying how it's exaggerating or false, and underplaying how it's an accurate picture of crime? Well, I think you could say the functionalists, because they see society as good, the institutions have a function to play, and they're doing, they're carrying out this purpose that they have. And you could use the left realist to say, yes, there is this problem of the social construction of crime, but statistics about crime are basically accurate, and in that sense you could say the media does exaggerate, but perhaps it also reflects genuine fears about certain groups. So we could use the functionalists to say that they would criticise the Neo-Marxist view for overplaying the social construction of crime through the labelling and moral panics in the media, and underplaying the initial act. So in solving crime, solutions need to be focused on dealing with issues like culture and the choices of people who choose not to conform to the legitimate processes and channels for achieving success and the goals of society. Why do people choose to innovate rather than conform? Rather than simply looking at labelling in the media, we need to accept the statistics and challenge people's choices. And this would be supported by right realists, who would argue that the Neo-Marxist view is ignoring the fact that people make rational choices. We need to punish people rather than simply sympathise with offenders. The left realists would criticise the Neo-Marxist view of crime as a political act. The left realists would say that if this were the case, it does not explain mugging, doesn't explain crimes like mugging and rape, which are not motivated by a desire to challenge the system. And therefore, in solving crime, we need to take the statistics more seriously. Perhaps the media is reflecting genuine fears about groups in society on the part of the public, and therefore take a more realistic approach, which is not idealistic, which doesn't over-romanticise the criminal, but actually looks at the reason why the criminal does it in the first place, which left realists would say is to do with other issues like relative deprivation, which is different to the material deprivation which Marxists argue is the problem. Okay, so that's Neo-Marxism evaluated. Then we can go on to...
Could you speak about liberals and how they argue that there needs to be an alternative to prison, to incarceration?
An alternative to prison incarceration, yes. Yeah, if we talk about prison, we could probably discuss that when we bring in right realism, which we're going to do after. So we're going to do feminism next, then left realism, then we could do the new right and right realism, and look at the liberal criticisms of the right realists, because they'll mention prison there. Okay, so we'll go into the feminist view. Okay, the feminists would be critical of Neo-Marxists. Like the left realists, they'd say crime is not a political act. For example, rape is motivated not by a desire to challenge the political system. Rape is probably...
for males to show that they have more power allow fallen females for them to get their power and reinforce patriarchal values.
Exactly. So it's probably not a result of a working class struggle, but it's probably to do with patriarchy, and therefore it's, as you say, it's an attempt to achieve masculinity. It's to be supported by figures like Messerschmitt, who argue that males from different class backgrounds have different opportunities to achieve masculinity, and therefore it's to do with gender and the culture of society, not only the economic structure. And solutions to crime therefore lie in what kind of measures for feminists. What would be the solutions of crime for feminists?
Would they say more research needs to be done to on women who are behind closed doors in the family, because there's many unreported crimes and they're ignored, women are ignored.
So we need to research crimes behind closed doors in the family, for example domestic violence, which takes place in the private sphere of the home. We often don't know and may ignore the hidden crimes. So solving crime lies in being honest and open about the problems of family life. For example, Germaine Greer says that in family life women are exploited in three ways: as wives, mothers and daughters, and so therefore we need to look at how abuse is located in the home. It's not something that just takes place on the street. They would talk about the fact of equality, gender inequality, and demanding equality and rights for women. They would argue that women should have the right to feel safe on the street. Some may advocate more public lighting and other measures to do with safety on public transport. Some feminists argue that this is betraying the values of feminism, because women should feel equal and able to walk wherever they want and not feel under threat from men. We can then evaluate feminist views. Let's pause that there. Stop.